All right, let's do it. It's the PHN Regroup. Good morning. Again, hope you like our little analog setup here. As promised, 10 a.m., we're back with you, myself and Dan Kingerski, in just a moment. Penn slammed the Sabres, as you see there, but was it enough to keep the positive vibes going? Interesting discussion for sure, as the schedule has flipped. The Penguins saw the Islanders and the Capitals ad nauseum over and over again in the month of February. And now as March begins, after a short stint against the Flyers and then the Rangers, we see the Sabres, and we will see the Sabres and the Devils coming up 7 of the next 9 games, I believe it is, against the two bottom teams, the two teams that are out of it in the NHL's East Division. Let's welcome in Dan Kingerski from, I'm assuming, Pittsburgh, PA, and not Greensburg this time around. Dan, thanks for joining on a Friday morning. Good to see you.
Yeah, well, usually it's better to hear me than see me, but we'll go for it.
It works, man. Yeah, you're back in familiar environs. The Penguins were in a new spot though last night up in Buffalo at KeyBank Arena. They hadn't been there yet this year. They'll be seeing the Sabres plenty coming up. And in reading your post-game takes on what happened last night, Penguins 5, Sabres 2, in case you missed it, late empty netter. But the Sabres were tied with the Penguins a couple of times. It wasn't exactly the most dominant performance. It wasn't anywhere close to the most dominant performance. I saw that you were like me. You were not terribly impressed with the execution, even though the results were there. So what was missing from the Penguins game last night that held you back from really giving out the A+ grades?
Well, I think it was a few things, Matt. Perhaps the sudden lack of fans again and that little bit of energy in the building. The Penguins didn't seem to have that extra gear, that extra step last night. I actually thought they kind of got it. Say in the last 7 minutes, they smelled some blood in the water, especially after Angelo's goal. It was a wicked shot, by the way. Mm-hmm. And until that point, they were just kind of going through the motions with the Sabres. And when you're playing a 6-win team, I guess that's possible. The defense was very soft. They were giving Buffalo a lot of space, especially in the perimeter. But in the process, they also gave Buffalo some space a little too close to the dots and inside the circles. And Colin Miller almost made them pay a couple of times. So I just think there was a lack of energy overall that didn't manifest itself, that did manifest itself until the last few minutes.
If you just look at the high danger chances, there weren't a lot in last night's game. It was kind of a sleepy affair for a while. It was just 5-4 in favor of the Penguins. You would have thought it'd be a little bit more voluminous when it comes to actual looks at the net that had a chance to go in. And I'm with you. The Penguins didn't seem to have their complete focus until it was winning time, if you will, in the third period. And I do want to talk about Angelo there as well. But this ties into a larger point for me is, number one, for us on the outside, how do we judge performance against some of these bottom rung teams, especially the Sabres, who are a step below most of their fellow also-rans in the NHL, at least so far this season. The results have been horrible. How do you go about it? And then if you're the Penguins as well, how do you keep that focus? Because it's just not gonna be the intensity that it was against the Flyers or even the Rangers this past week. So it's a double-pronged challenge. I know the coaching staff is going through that right now as they evaluate what happened last night. Well, how much do we grade on a curve? And what are our standards basically for these games against Buffalo and coming up against New Jersey? So that's the question I'd pose to you. What are your standards from the outside?
Well, I tend to try to think of it like a coach. First, you look at the process. Were they doing the little things, the little details that Sullivan harps on? Were they at least trying to do those? You can't have intensity every night, even in a 56-game compressed schedule. You're just not going to have your A game. Were you doing the little things right? Then I guess you broaden the scope and the picture a little bit. I thought last night the details were probably a C at best, but the big picture stuff was actually pretty good. The Penguins kind of threw some punches when they had to, literally and figuratively, I guess. You know, they get the Malkin goal, they get the Angelo goal, and the power play goal. Whether they were soft goals or not, I guess doesn't matter because it changes the situation and the scene. So I guess from that standpoint, if I'm Sullivan, I'm a little leery today. I have a little chat with the boys at practice coming up here. I think it's in an hour, maybe 2 hours up in Buffalo. Like, look, you got a bit lucky last night. Let's put them away hard in the first period on Saturday. We don't have to deal with that last 7 minutes and clanging posts and have to worry. Get it done in the first period, because I think we did see Buffalo really peter out, kind of fold in the third period. So take them out, get it done with, and then you can enjoy the last 20 minutes and not have to worry about chippiness or throwing Dylan Cozens into the board, et cetera.
It is ironic because I thought the only way Buffalo has a chance in either of these two games is to score first. And the Penguins took care of that with Evgeny Malkin capping off a 2-on-0 with Kasperi Kapanen. So those two continue to hook up for obvious results on the scoreboard. But it almost doesn't even matter, right? If you allow a goal in the next shift or the next couple of shifts, as we saw with Tage Thompson. A soft one on Tristan Jarry, no doubt about it. And goaltending wasn't terrific last night. As I mentioned, just 9 total high danger chances. And if you take away the empty netter, there were 6 goals that went in. So not a great percentage for the guys who are wearing the pads and the masks. But I digress. In that same way, I think you can also look at the second period too. The Penguins get back on top. Brandon Tanev scores a dynamic goal. It's fantastic to put them ahead. And again, maybe not one shift later, but just a couple of shifts later, the Penguins give away that momentum by just not covering Olofsson, one of the few guys on the Sabres you have to worry about who can really shoot the puck. And Riley Sheahan just knifed through the Pens defense, found the puck in the corner, and there was his man wide open in the slot. So
yeah, Matt, I think we've seen enough of Riley Sheahan over the years. I think you and I, saw, at least I can probably say I saw more than 100 games with Riley Sheahan.
Yeah,
that should never happen. That should not be allowed to happen on this planet or any other planet. Sheahan does have the ability, but he never uses it unless you kind of give him the opportunity. And that was, I thought, that was you knew the Penguins were going through the motions when Sheahan could streak down the left wing like that, and through 3 Penguins feed a pass into the slot for a prime scoring opportunity. Honestly, when I saw that happen, I would have bet money. I'm not a bettor. I would have probably put money on the Sabres winning the game at that point.
Yeah, I had a very uneasy feeling at 2-2, even at 1-1, just because they had a chance to really put them down and give the Sabres reason to lose faith in themselves yet again, because hope does spring eternal, at least at the opening faceoff. And then as results dictate, it can go away for a team that has now not won in 9 straight. They just have 2 points, a couple of overtime losses in their past 9. The Sabres, they're sinking. They may not even have the desire to fire their coach right now and pay a guy not to coach in Ralph Kruger. So there's a dead man walking quality to the whole thing, the whole operation up there in Buffalo. And there's no Jack Eichel on the ice. So if you're the Pens, you don't have to worry about him either. And still, there are plenty of reasons to be concerned. You mentioned the post hit, a couple from the Buffalo defenseman Miller. There was one other opportunity that just tinged iron as well for Buffalo. But let's talk about some positives, because I did love the game, despite the lack of quality of competition. But I love the game of the fourth line, and Anthony Angelo in particular, not just because he scored a goal. He hit a post. He had a strong driving shot in the first period as well that tested the Buffalo netminders. So there's a lot to like from his game. And I could sense right away, Dan, when Angelo made his season debut, Mike Sullivan put him on the power play on the second unit. I was somewhat taken aback by that. But you see what's in his game. He looks like a power forward in the making if he develops in the right way. And it's a tough season right now with the taxi squad being what it is. You don't necessarily want to put your prospects on the taxi squad. You want to get them action in the AHL if they're not playing at the top level. But this is the first time that a Penguins fourth liner has really grabbed my attention as being someone that has the ability to stick around in the lineup, number one, on a contending team, but also number two, to develop into something extra. All due respect to your Sam Lafferty's and your Drew O'Connors, but Angelo looks a cut above to me just because he has that offensive skill set. He created a lot on his own last night. What have you liked from him? What have you seen from him in his first few games in the NHL?
Well, Mike Sullivan talked about getting Angelo to the net, and they've been talking about or talking to him about doing those things in the offensive zone. Obviously, he had a bit of jump in his step playing in Buffalo, but that's what the Penguins' fourth line needs every single night. You're not going to play 12 or 15 minutes to get the legs going. You have to have that adrenaline burst, that energy, even in 7 minutes, even in 8 minutes. So that's going to be Angelo's biggest challenge. He looked good last night. And I mean, actually, he looked good. He has to translate that beyond just playing in his hometown. He has to translate that to playing in Pittsburgh. He has to do those things elsewhere. He's had some good shifts here and there. I mean, because he is heavy, you notice him. He hits heavy. When he hits you, the boards move. So the Penguins do have something there, Matt. He is a Cornell guy. I don't think he was part of any men's choirs or barbershop quartets. Office reference. But,
Ken Dryden didn't like that reference. I'm trying to think who else went to Cornell. There's not a ton.
No, well, yeah, they put some players in the NHL, but not many Pittsburgh Penguins anyway. This is where when I start doing my trade analysis, and that's coming up this weekend, I'm not doing it haphazardly. I think this year, above all years, because we have a new GM and president of hockey ops to kind of read and predict that it's not quite as easy this year to start doing the trade analysis or trade needs, because I don't think we know quite what Hextall and Burke are thinking, regardless of what they're saying. But that fourth line definitely either A, needs to step up immediately, or B, the GM and the hockey ops need to address that. And it's nice to see Angelo put his foot forward. Let's see if it continues, though.
Angelo, Colton Sevier, and Mark Jankowski each played in about the 9.5 minute range at even strength last night. That's a huge number for the Penguins' fourth line by this season standards. Typically, you're looking at 3 or 4, maybe 5 if they're winning the whole way. So this game, more than any other, Sullivan took advantage of the circumstance and the fact that his fourth line was going and actually rolled 4 lines for a good portion of that game. So that's a positive development. In fact, you look at some of the third line numbers. Brendan Tanev played just 11 minutes at even strength. So the fourth line was almost on even terms when it came to 5-on-5 play and playing time and opportunity. Anthony Angelo in particular, when he was on the ice, 8 shot attempts for, 0 against. That's pretty fair. And of course the goal that he scored too.
So, I went into the game last night. I had a circle around Cody Eakin. I wanted to see what he had. Because I was considering putting him on the trade list, quite frankly. It's a player the Penguins should take a look at as one of those grimy centers who might be able to help. But if the Penguins' fourth line is going to beat you at this point, you're off the list. You're done. No, we're drawing a big red line through your name. I didn't realize it was quite that lopsided with the 8-0 for the Penguins' fourth line. But, Matt, that's one of the things about Mike Sullivan. When you're going, he sees it right away and he rewards you. And the more you keep going, the more he rewards you. I think from a player standpoint, there's a very meritorious feeling about that, where if you have some hop, he'll put you out there. And the fourth line definitely got their just deserves last night.
Yeah, I think that you have to like that as a player, right? Maybe if you're a veteran, you're looking for a little extra cushion. Maybe you don't like that so much. But for the most part, I think players respect the honesty and the accountability within the game, as opposed to just like writ large on a macro culture perspective. When you're talking about results and trying to get results in a game, then I don't know how you can really be too upset about it if you do perform or you don't perform. Now, power play for the Penguins, again, cashes in. I think they've scored 4 or more goals overall in 6 of their past 8. So the offense has picked it up in a large part because of the power play. Again, a power play goal last night. Jake Gensel given all sorts of time to pick his spot. But we saw the setup from behind the net. I talked about this with Jesse Marshall last night on Pittsburgh Postgame, also on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Make sure to check that out.
But I made a big deal last week about Sidney Crosby on the left side of the ice, but Crosby behind the net, there may not be a player I'd rather have behind the net than him when you're talking about power play setup. So I'm liking the different points of attack is what I'm saying here from the Pens power play. They've finally started to figure out where they want to originate the attack from, as opposed to just move the puck around the ice continuously in a carousel-like motion. It looked like that was the case for a while. So I don't know if that's maybe Sid taking more charge, or if that's actually a directive from Todd Reardon and the results of some video meetings and that sort of thing. But I love playmaking from behind the net. It makes the defenders turn. It makes the goalie leery. And as you saw last night against a Buffalo penalty kill that's really good, actually. They don't go shorthanded that much, but they're very good on a rate basis. It made them look like amateurs there. So more promising production and developments from the power play, at least from my perspective here.
Well, behind the net is one of those things that I know a lot of fans want to see, Sid or Evgeny in Gretzky's office, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things you can't go to too often, because at that point, then one player can pin you back there. So you kind of have to pick your spots, be judicious and quick about it. The old days of setting up back there and the penalty kill panicking, you get that once, maybe twice, but you don't get it a third time. And you certainly in these series, you're not going to get that a lot. It was okay. I thought the first Penguins power play was kind of bunk, but then the second one, Johansson really gave Gensel way too much net to shoot at. A goalie who's 6'5". My gosh, don't hug the post like a 5'8". Take a step forward and take away the net. But that's what happens when you're a 6-win team and you're dealing with your third string goalie. Who Johansson's been one of those prospects who's been hanging around forever and never quite materialized. The Penguins had good movement, but I wouldn't get too excited about last night's power play goal just yet.
Johansson played, which was, I think, curious when you consider Carter Hutton was available for Buffalo. I know Mike Harrington of the Buffalo News was pretty apoplectic as to why a guy like Hutton, who has great career numbers against the Penguins, I didn't realize that. I think he's helped the Sabres get 5 wins against Pittsburgh over the past couple of seasons.
5-1 against the Penguins. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. He didn't play, though. I imagine we'll see Kruger turn to him for game 2 of this series tomorrow night up in Buffalo. But I was not impressed by Johansson's play. I thought that on the Gensel goal, he gave too much. I'm not sure what he was doing on the Tanev goal. It was a nice move from Tanev to realize that the 5-hole was open, but he kept trying to go down with the paddle as opposed to just a straight butterfly, which would have gotten the job done. You see why he is number 3 on the depth chart for sure. So that's certainly one of those things you have to consider when you look at the performance and the fact that 5 goals went in. Well, 4 with a goalie in net. Tristan Jarry went for the empty netter, by the way. I was thrilled to see that. I had a feeling 2-goal lead for the Pens playing against a team in Buffalo that maybe isn't going to put too much pressure on you offensively. He went for it, a strong shot, but maybe Ron Hextall can go down to the training facility in a couple of days and show him how to get it done.
I did the math, actually. I think I tweeted this out last night, Matt. Most of the time, the goalies are 1,000 to 1 to score a goal. Yeah. Like if you start betting individual games, which means if you bet $10 every game that Tristan Jarry starts now for basically the rest of his career, if he ever scores, you're going to be thousands of dollars ahead. And I might actually start doing that if I can afford to waste $400, $500 a season, because one of these days it's going to pay off $10,000. But it was kind of funny. It was kind of, I didn't have a chance to ask Sullivan what he thought of that. I think Sullivan spanked Fleury a few years ago when Fleury tried that. I don't think Sullivan was, I seem to remember Sullivan was not overly thrilled. Maybe it was even Murray, because it was picked off at the blue line and the puck stayed in the zone. So,
2-goal lead for me is okay. That's why.
Oh, but 1 goal is no good.
Yeah, I think you really have to have no pressure at all if you're going to go for it up 1, or maybe with just a few seconds left.
Okay,
that's a possibility as well. Let's go to some comments here. We do have a few folks chiming in. Walt Flanagan, as always, old reliable not to call you old, my friend, but you are there consistently. He says, my back hurts. Okay, well, we'll take that into account. We're all struggling through some things in the morning, certainly. He says that game was boring, but a win is a win. That was my reaction to it. That's what you want, the 2 points. But, of course, I'm like you, Dan. I do judge based on process. I think you have to, right? Because process is more repeatable than actual results. In a game like hockey, where so much can be dictated on bounces, close calls, you have to go by process or you're going to go insane. If you ride results all the time and pucks going in or not, that's when you do some things where you start to draw conclusions based on ghosts and things that aren't there.
Well, also we see this when teams hit a bit of a winning streak as well. Typically they end because some bad habits creep in. You get rewarded for a little while with wrong play. And so then when push comes to shove and you have to right play, to butcher the English language.
It works.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying, and then you have to reset. So teams, down the stretch, you always kind of watch how teams are winning, who's winning and how to gauge your Stanley Cup favorites. So, yeah, and I think here's a bigger point, Matt, that I touched on with our PHN Plus story yesterday. Why I think the Pittsburgh Penguins can really be a lot better than I anticipated and a lot better than I think most of us anticipated is because I am seeing the seeds of those good things. They were terrible in the first month of the season. They got some wins, but they knew they were lucky and they weren't resting on those 2 points, but rather they were working towards a greater goal and a greater good and purging themselves of those bad habits. Last night might not have been the best game to make my point on that, but I think we're seeing a great cleanup of the Penguins. I think we're starting to see a bit more of a Mike Sullivan team, and I think we're seeing a bit more of Jim Rutherford's vision when he added Kapanen and Tanev and Zucker, and we're seeing that kind of team come together. I should also say Mike Matheson as well. So I think the Penguins are beginning to play to their identity and play to their strengths, and overall, I'm liking it. Every team has holes and things you have to fill at the trade deadline, but it's a whole lot better to be shopping to fill holes when you're winning and playing well than it is when you're stinking and desperate and need a piece to get you back on track.
That's the spot that I think the Penguins have been in more often than not the last 3 seasons is trying to fix it as opposed to trying to add to it and augment it. And
that's a better way to put it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's why there's 2 of us here on the show. No doubt about that. Yeah.
Take
just
the rebound goal.
Just to clear it up, I'm good for picking up the trash. It all counts the same. A couple of comments there on YouTube about John Marino. Yeah, it was a maintenance day, quote unquote, from practice that John Marino was given, but he is banged up. There's something going on with the upper body. Of course, we saw Chad Ruedel, the former Sabre, take the ice against his maybe a few of his old mates. I'm not sure how many are still left there with the amount of turnover that goes on in Buffalo on a consistent basis. You mentioned the rough stuff, Dan. Let's go there because I didn't touch on it last night on the post-game show. And what we saw Zach Aston Reese wipe out Dylan Cousins. Didn't like that hit at all. I think that when you engage a player in that area about 6 to 8 feet from the boards, that's tough because if you do connect and if there is some sudden change in trajectory or direction from your opponent, you could really cause a serious injury. And we saw Cousins slow to get up there in that situation. For me, it was boarding, even if it wasn't called. And then you saw Chad Ruedel as well, nearly take out the legs of Rasmus Dahlin, the Sabres' prized young defenseman. So I wonder if there's some carryover. In fact, Ralph Kruger himself, not the most pugnacious, bellicose coach. He seems like more of a technician, but he was talking about hoping that fires up his team and that there is some sort of a response one way or the other tomorrow night. So that's one thing to look forward to see how much that spills over.
Yeah, let me take a big picture approach to this. Those 2 hits by the Penguins, lest I ever be accused of being a homer, which doesn't usually happen to me. But
no, it doesn't. That's not usually a problem for you.
No, I try to shoot straight. I thought that those two hits especially were the culmination of the Penguins trying to play physical when that's not really their identity or their game. That looked to me like those two hits especially were fish out of water. Those were Aston Reese trying to be physical and Chad Ruedel trying to be physical, but not being very good at it because that's just not your natural inclination. I knowing Zach Aston Reese, the little bit that I do, and the personal conversations that we've had, that's certainly not him. And I bet you he was probably a little bit taken aback by the potential ramifications of that hit, that he might have hurt somebody, because he's been on the other end of those. And I think if there's a player who understood the situation that he put somebody in, it would probably be Aston Reese. So I don't think you're going to see that kind of stuff from the Penguins again. But it's also part of the process, too, in learning how to be physical, learning how to hit back, or learning how to be the aggressor. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have a little bit of that sloppiness. Those two hits, though, were probably a little too sloppy for anyone's comfort.
Yeah, good point about Czar, as it were. He is a cerebral type of player, soft-spoken even off the ice. I enjoyed chatting with him in my opportunities to get to know him a little bit. He's one of those players that you feel like you do get an opportunity to get to know because he's more open and forthright, or at least it appears that way. Definitely receptive to a real conversation as opposed to just the usual Q&A type of a format that you get in a locker room. So, Zach Aston Reese has played more physically since he got that shoulder fixed. It appears he's not fearful, certainly, of absorbing the contact. That was definitely a step too far, in my view. Let's go to some more comments from Mutation666. He says that he wants to see maybe a little bit more of Casey DeSmith. We have basically seen almost exclusively Tristan Jarry. In fact, when there is a day off between games, it has been Jarry ever since the Penguins returned from that COVID break about a month ago. The only time we've seen DeSmith has been in the back-to-back situations. But this does appear to be a pretty prime opportunity to get Casey some reps, doesn't it, tomorrow?
Well, yeah, when you go back-to-back, well, you know what, though? Here's the thing. I'm just checking the schedule now. Today, Matt, is the first day maybe of the season, but certainly the first day in a long time in which the Pittsburgh Penguins are genuinely in a playoff spot. There's no trickery. There's they now have the fourth best winning percentage in the East Division. This is the first time, at least since maybe the second week of the season, before the week-long break when they had kind of climbed up into third place. But you really can't go to DeSmith too often this season for this reason. Casey's a solid backup goalie, but he's a 3 goals against guy. That's not a knock. He's just a 3 goals against guy. Whereas Jarry is your number one, you're hoping Jarry holds the other team to 1 or 2, and Jarry is far more apt to make several big saves throughout the game than DeSmith. And until the Penguins can breathe easy, you ride your number one, especially when he's in the zone. You keep him kind of on this roll. I asked him, what day is today? Today's Friday.
Today is Friday, yes.
I have no game, practice.
That's all that matters, man. It's just, is it a game day or is it a practice day?
Yeah, there's no such thing as a weekend in this job. It's
not this season.
No, the only thing that separates a Saturday from a Tuesday is the fact that Hockey Night in Canada is on. But I asked Jarry about how he's handling the challenge. He's like, this is fun. Every other day, you're back at the rink, you're ready to go, and I think there is a wonderful routine to it. There's not that downtime, turning off, firing it back up. So as long as your goalie is healthy and enjoying it, you just ride your number one. I think most teams are doing that too.
If I were a player, I would like this type of a rhythm. I would like a shorter schedule, first of all, because I think you tend to lose focus as a team and as an individual over the course of 6 months. You're never going to be at your best over the course of 6 months. Now, over the course of 3.5 or 4 months, maybe there's a better chance that you're closer to your A game and your A level of focus more pertinently. That's what it's about. It's the mental strain as much as the physical strain. A season like this, it's almost all mental strain because you're not traveling that much either. And when you do travel, Dan, they're all overnight flights. They're quick flights. You're home by what, 1 or 2 o'clock when you get the charter going on. That's
probably
nice
sooner,
too.
quite frankly, because these flights to Buffalo, Philadelphia, New York.
Oh yeah,
they might be an hour-long flight. I mean, the old days, those of us who are old, we'd take the bus
yeah,
to Buffalo or Philadelphia. Those are over with. So they probably roll out of the arena somewhere before 11 o'clock, and they're home before midnight, which is when I'm having dinner some of these nights before I get back to work. So they shouldn't be too mentally tired from these. It's a great. There's no unplugging. It just keeps you in it, but not in an overly taxing playoff sort of way, when every game is win or go home sort of pressure too.
Yeah, and the pressure is on, no doubt, for a team in the Penguins' position right now, how tight the East is. But all the ancillary stuff, some of the things that tend to get in the way and can prevent you from being at your best, they've been not eliminated this year, but they've been mitigated just because of how the schedule is and how things have been set up. I didn't get a chance to ask you about this last time, Dan. Do you like the idea of carrying over some of these 2-game series into future NHL seasons? I do. I would like to have at least one of those against a division rival each year. Not for the strain mitigation purposes, but just because I enjoy the intrigue of, well, how is this team going to adjust? What are they going to do in net for game 2 after game 1? That sort of thing I think is interesting. And I also think that it wouldn't be that big of a deal if you're a season ticket holder and you see Washington back-to-back, or you see the Islanders or the Flyers back-to-back. I'm not sure that would affect my decision to purchase tickets or to even go to a game. I think that's just as fun. It's like a little mini playoff series in a lot of ways.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to do 2 things at once here. I'm going to sign up for my COVID vaccine. I just got into the waiting room.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Multitask. I like it.
Multitask. Let me throw 2 things off of you. First of all, Gary Bettman yesterday kind of laid out a few things in his chat with the media. And that is, there'll be no Canadian division next year, but he did concede that we might see more divisional games for next season's schedule, which I like. 2, the NHL schedule is still built on this archaic notion that a lot of teams don't have television. They're still kind of scheduling games. Oh, wait, make sure Connor McDavid goes to Pittsburgh and Sidney Crosby goes to Edmonton at least once a year. Get to hell with that stuff. If you want to watch Connor McDavid, you simply pop on the TV any night of the week, or you spend $100 a year and you can watch all the McDavid games that you want. You can get almost sick of them watching McDavid out of market. So that's, I think play more division games. Absolutely keep these series just for travel purposes. I mean, they could play 48 games if you have 7 teams in a division, or what is it? If you have 7 times 6, that's 40. You can play 42 divisional games and do them in 2-game sets. And then every other year, a player would come to the city. So next year, let's say the Penguins should go to Edmonton, play 2 games against the Oilers up there.
Okay. Yeah.
And then 2 years from now, Edmonton comes to Pittsburgh and plays 2 games. These things are very possible. They're doable if the NHL will kind of break out of the box and their mindset and realize this new streaming age that we live in, where you don't have to make sure a player comes to town, because teams that have good fan bases and good teams are going to sell out anyway. You don't need McDavid for that sellout. Very few teams do. And even the teams that do need McDavid, like, is McDavid going to Detroit every year going to sell out the Red Wings that game? No, it's not going to get you a sellout. So I think we can move past some of those old notions. Absolutely keep this reduced travel, or heavy division type of schedule. No question. I love it.
And of course, we're going to see, are we going to go back to the old Metro, the Atlantic, all of that? I know we're not going to have a Canadian division. I think that was a fait accompli. This is just a 1 year only solution. And I don't think it's a great solution right now. But I think last year there were 5 games against your divisional opponents. I wouldn't mind seeing 6. I don't know if I want to knock it up to 8, which is what it was when we first came out of that full season lockout. That to me was a little much when you do have the opportunity when there's no COVID to be able to travel and all those sorts of things. But I like the series, and your point is well taken about streaming. And if you want to watch Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews or whoever else or whichever team, then you can do that. And it's a very small minority of people in a market who are actually there in the rink watching the games. Whether I've been a fan or a media member, that's one thing that I've taken away from the experience, is that there's so many people out there consuming this in so many different ways. And even back when we were growing up, Dan, we were still watching on TV most nights. We were at the arena all the time. So even that applies, but even more so now with what's going on with media rights and how accessible all this stuff is, Twitter, GIFs. And I feel like I get a good cross section of the league just by trolling Twitter every night, not even looking at actual games.
No, that's when you start getting fan opinion and blogger opinion. And if you swim too far down that rabbit hole, all of a sudden Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin need to be traded yesterday, and the Penguins aren't very good. And
well, I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm just talking about if I want to see Austin Matthews' overtime winner from last night, which I did want to see that over and over again. I can pull it up without even going to the league's website. Maybe that's not a good thing for the league, but I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, how interesting is it that part of the new ESPN's deal is you can actually get the NHL package now for less money if you buy ESPN Plus?
Yeah, which I already have. It's much less money. That blew me away, actually. The NHL is just saying, okay, we're done producing this ourselves. ESPN, you can just do it for us.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if I didn't have such a huge issue with the Disney Corporation on many levels, political, geopolitical, what they've done to Star Wars and the Muppets, I would happily give them money. However, I generally, as a rule, do not give. Of course, now I'm going to be canceled. Disney will have their 100,000 Twitter accounts attack me, but I just hate Disney so much.
Well, I'm sorry, because the NHL is, in fact, you could argue that ESPN got the premier package already, and whoever is left is fighting for number 2 because, well, you don't have to argue it. It is the case. It's the A package that ESPN got.
Yeah. No one else will be able to get all the streaming games and over 1,000 games. Matt, maybe we should talk about this. I hope ESPN does it right. I really do. I don't want to see this new school church it up hockey. And if they don't bring that context and flavor that is hockey, I think they'll be doing fans a huge disservice, because that is the one thing that maybe separates me, for good and bad. It's why a lot of fans get mad at me, consistently, is that I'm always kind of bringing that sort of Canadian perspective. And I do it as much as possible, not to upset people, but because I think it's essential to understanding the game and the unwritten rules, is that hardcore Canadian perspective in the game. And if ESPN kind of whitewashes over that, I think they'll be doing a disservice, because they can't change the game no matter how big their check is. The Canadians will always own the NHL, literally or figuratively, take your pick. And so I'm curious to see what kind of hockey coverage we get from the Mouseketeers.
Yeah, I wonder if they bring someone aboard who's been producing shows and content for NBC recently. If they bring in someone from the league to help be a guidance from above, a guiding hand, because it's not just about. I mentioned on-air talent last time around, and ESPN has plenty of folks who love hockey. I think they could afford maybe poach some people from north of the border. I'd like to see, like you. I love how they dissect it and how hockey is life in Canada. I wish it was more like that here, instead of Steelers all the time, and football. Oh my God.
Oh, hey, by the way, the Penguins played. But hey, did you hear Juju had a new social media post?
God. Yeah. I mean, I just,
But I would also, I've been to Canada obviously many times for work and also for vacation. And it's just amazing. You put on every channel, everywhere you turn, there's a hockey player or some reference to hockey. And it's like, man, I love my country, but boy, I would not mind being a Canadian as well. This is terrific.
Well, this is why I may or may not have a VPN service, which may or may not allow me to watch Canadian channels, which may or may not allow me to watch, a very different kind of hockey coverage. Yeah. If I really want to know what's going on, go to Sportsnet, I think Sportsnet has really kind of taken a step above TSN this year, especially. It seems like the boys at Sportsnet have really found their stride, and I can't say enough good things about Elliot Friedman and his reporting through a lot of this, and even some of his kindness to the National Hockey Now network recently too.
Mm. Yeah, he seems to get it right. He's part of the good guys up there, the good guy crew, and
yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
And certainly helps sell the game when you dig in as deeply as he does. Chris Johnson. I love Ray Ferraro's perspective on things. I wish we could see more of him. I always liked him alongside John Butchergross on NHL Tonight. Remember that? That's what I cut my teeth on 20 years ago, watching it late night on ESPN2. So we can hope. And I think that the motivation is there from both parties, I suppose, because I know that ESPN wants to continue to flesh out ESPN Plus, especially, so they get that aspect of it. They get that inventory covered. And I think hockey in general has an issue with still being not as accessible as it should be. I know it does to people of all economic backgrounds, but the hockey clientele, the people who watch hockey, are generally more affluent and more desirable for advertisers. Like it or lump it, it's a positive and it's a negative, but ESPN gets another sample of that, and the NHL gets an opportunity to strut its stuff a bit for fans that haven't seen it very much recently, or even for folks like us who want to see it get an elevated platform. They want to put their best foot forward too. So motivation is high on both sides to get this thing right.
I missed my vaccine appointment, or I missed the chance. There were a couple in State College and Gettysburg, and CVS is now all booked up across the state. I was in the waiting room hoping for my turn, and I was too far back in line. But yeah, Matt, and here's the funny thing. I really believe this in my heart. If the American networks, they'll never give equal time to the NHL because the NHL hasn't earned that yet. But if they began to cover it with the same intensity, and bring the soap opera to the game, right? Bring the soap opera that pulls fans in as part of your coverage that Canada does so very well. I think you would see more media consumption, more traditional media consumption of the NHL. Then again, if they actually got smart and the traditional legacy media figured that out, they might put me out of business.
Yeah, do you want that?
No, not really. I exist because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I hate to be so blunt about it, but we've laughed about this for years. When the big boys figure it out, they're going to squash the little guys. Instead of me getting 750,000 people a month to come and read Pittsburgh Hockey Now, if they can get that stuff from a rights holder who can then exert power to keep little David away from Goliath, it's going to change the landscape again. So that's, maybe I don't want to say this out loud, but I would love to see Espen and whoever gets the second contract, be it the new network of NBC with USA and CNBC, whatever the hell they're going to do there, or Fox Sports. I'd love to see them really bring that intensity and passion to the coverage.
Let's go with one more comment, just because it's so funny and off the wall. I don't know much about wrestling. Dan, are you a wrestling fan at all, or did you watch it when you were a kid?
I can get by from 10 or 15 years ago, but once The Rock and Stone Cold were done, I would check in on The Undertaker occasionally, but that's about it.
Yeah, I really can't help you here, but Walt wants to know if the Pens were a classic 80s wrestler, WWF, who would they be this season specifically? Yeah, I'm out to lunch on this one. I have no idea what to say.
Let me think about that. If they were a classic 80s wrestler, Who was so popular you almost began to hate them? I would kind of put them maybe
That's Hulk Hogan, right? No?
Hogan was the man.
Okay.
And he was just so, back in the 80s, no one knew to hate him except me.
Yeah.
Because I was a Rowdy Roddy Piper guy. I don't have Rowdy in the background anymore. I might say the Macho Man, who was the Intercontinental Champion in the 80s. He wasn't seen as a headliner just yet. Let's see here. Kind of very talented but loose. That's a tough one. That's a great question. That really is a good one. I might say the Junkyard Dog.
God. Now I have to go on a Wikipedia treasure hunt to figure out what you're even talking about. So,
the Junkyard Dog was great because he was so over with the fans, and you couldn't wait for him. He would do like the dance with his knees and all, And he was also a tough guy. Like he was a stout human being. He wasn't the biggest, but he could have been a lot more had things broke the right way. I think he could have been one of the faces of the old WWF. But unfortunately, I'm going to kind of chum the water and leave it go. The WWF back in the 80s didn't put over their black talent as much as they do today, and it was probably a little tougher back in the 80s to get over if you were a black man. So maybe the Junkyard Dog didn't get his just deserves.
Okay.
Well, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I know the Penguins have been in the spotlight for so long. I'm sure a lot of folks are sick of them. The heel turn has already happened many times over. So they're hanging in there, though. They're hanging on, and like we said, 4 wins in a row, and just playing better. Even though last night wasn't terrific. So we'll bring it back to that to wrap it up. Tomorrow night against the Sabres at KeyBank Arena. I anticipate that we will see a little boil over from last night's rough stuff in the third period. Should be, like I said, that's why I like these 2-game series, because you get the opportunity for this. You don't have to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks, months to see that rematch. So we'll get it, even though it is against the team that is floundering at the bottom of the standings. Dan, thanks. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next time. I'm
still thinking of the wrestler.
You can chime in yourself on the live chat. Just keep it rolling.
Yeah. All right. Have fun, Matt.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.